another Tales from a Professional Nerd. My name is BryanCPSteele, and I will be your nerd today and any other day that you watch one of my silly little shows. Well, hi, everybody. I hope this finds you well. I hope everything is wonderful on your neck of the woods, and that you're having a great day, because it's important for us to hope that other people are doing well, because, you know, life and stuff. Okay, so let's jump in. I know it's been a few weeks. I had a bunch of topics and lives and things that came up, but I wanted to do another one of my, 5 ways or 5 methods or 5 questions or the 5 series, 555. I wanted to do another one of those because someone asked me in a completely unrelated Discord channel about DMing or GMing or storytelling or whatever at conventions. And knowing that we've got Gen Con here in just a couple weeks, and then a few months later we've got Gamehole, where I get to do a ton of really good, do a bunch of special events. I wanted to talk about what kind of five helpful tips, I think, for running at conventions, for being the person behind the screen. Obviously, for playing at a convention, it runs the gamut. Depends on what the game is. Whether is it a table full of people that you know, is it strangers? But when it comes to actually being the game master, being the person behind the screen that's got to make that entertaining for the people who bought those tickets. If it's a ticketed convention event, a ticketed event convention, whatever. The people who put meat in seats, they are obviously that is their experience for the convention. Not only is that their experience for the game, it's their experience with you as a game master, with the company you might be representing, or the game club or demo guild or whatever's going on. But it also is going to be what they remember when they leave that convention. Yeah, sure, people might not remember the kind of the median, the middle of the road. Yeah, I played a game, but they're going to remember the lows and they're going to remember the highs. And you don't want to be one of the lows. I can tell you that straight away. You don't want to be and from a perspective of a gamer, of a manager, of a person who helps have run these conventions, the people who try to set game masters up for other events. You don't want to be one of the lows, because it even if it is just maybe it was a one-off as a bad session, or you didn't gel with a particular player, that's understandable. But like, when you get labeled as a game master that is problematic, or a game master that is maybe several people come away from that event as, man, I really, I don't want to try that game again, because I had a really bad, had a bad taste in my mouth. And obviously you don't want to be on the low end. You'd love to be the ones that people rave about, that they go home and they tell their friends about. They jump on podcasts and go, so I went to insert random show, and this person GM'd an amazing game of insert random game, and I had a blast. It was amazing. I'm going to buy that game and bring it back to all my friends. I mean, it is honestly, good GMing is what drives the popularity needle on some of these games. There's a reason why games like Pirate Borg have just blown up in the last couple of years. They're the people who they have running those events, the people who are their boots on the ground, are phenomenal at pushing the mentality of that game, of pointing out all of the strengths and kind of avoiding the weaknesses. And that has really shown. It is really it has helped frame that game as something much larger than what it probably could have been or should have been. Maybe, I don't know. But in so far that, like, that has helped set the stage for that game's success, and a lot of that has to do with really good GMing at conventions. Word of mouth spreads like crazy. Thank you, internet. And it's it is definitely something that it's a learned skill, obviously GMing collectively, and it's drastically different than GMing for your people at home. GMing a one shot at a convention is a completely different animal than running a long term campaign for your friends at your house, or uh, running even just like a couple of, let's just play once for fun, but it's people that you know, everybody around the table in a comfortable setting without other tables being loud and having to stick to a particular time schedule. There's so many things that are, I don't want to say working against you, but that you have to take into consideration when you're GMing at a convention. And I wanted to take today to basically map out, five, technically six, but one of them. Well, I'll start with the thing that has little to do with the GMing and more to do with, I think, just running games in general. All right, so let's get started. Let's get this. I've got a meeting later today, so I'm going to try and make sure the filming on this does not that I don't have to edit multiple cuts because I got to run to the meeting and then come back and finish the video. So let's get started. I'm going to call this number zero. Um, Out of, so we'll do one, two, three, four, five. I'm going to call this number zero, and this is my personal thing. A lot of times, your materials, your prep and everything is kind of handled by the game club or demo guild or the company that you're representing. But I personally, if it's a game that I'm going to be running, if it's a game that I'm going to be planning and running, I like to have like a topic checklist or an X card checklist. Um, that I can give to the players in the beginning when they're sitting down reading their characters and stuff. I particularly love the Monty Cook consent form. That's basic, and I call it a consent form, but it's more like, it's just a collection of different topics and buzzwords and a couple of blank lines if you've got something weird that you want to put in for a player to let the GM know, hey, I'm not I'm not terribly keen on this, or this is a hard out for me. If I need to leave this table, let me know. Or this is gonna absolutely ruin my game if this comes up. Or maybe I don't mind if it's in the story, but I really don't want it highlighted as something that's graphically described, or whatever the case may be. And I think that it's very important to make sure that you understand your players, because at a convention, a lot of times these players are strangers, people you've never met before and may never meet again. Hopefully you'll meet again because they'll try and come back to your table and find you and play with you again because they love what you've done. But whatever that may be, a lot of times these are the first time that you've met these people, so you don't know anything about them. And you don't want to create a situation inadvertently to make anybody uncomfortable, make somebody want to leave, make somebody just have a bad time. Because it very well could be a light switch type thing that, maybe I'm going to pick something utterly absurd. Um, Maybe this particular person was once suffered through the poisonous sting of a male platypus. That's a thing, by the way. Um, and Your adventure randomly has a male platypus situation in there, and he as soon as it's like, all right, well, I grab the platypus. Oh no, you've hit the spurs to make your Constitution save versus poison, and that person at the table goes, this isn't funny. It's not something to laugh at. Everyone's laughing about this thing. It happened to me, and I lost my thumb. Like, or whatever. Whatever the case may be, you want to make sure that you've given everybody the opportunity to tell you they're okay with stuff. Now, a lot of times gamers will look at the topics on the consent form and go, I'm okay with all this, whatever. Just giving them the opportunity and making sure that they know they've had that opportunity is worth the 5 minutes of your time, because that way, if something does come up and they start getting upset, you can be like, hey, I asked, I warned you. was really kind of hoping that you would have told me that platypuses were a big deal for you, and platypi, whatever. That you would have mentioned that. I apologize that this scene made you upset, but that should have been something you let us know because of the form, if that really was going to something that bothered you. And a lot of times the forms, I mean, you get a lot of people who are like, no explicit sex, no, no child endangerment, no. Someone who I play with, sadly, infrequently, she is very much do not use starvation or withholding food as punishment as a topic. And I've never asked. It's not my place to try and dig into someone's reasoning, but there has only been one instance where I know I was planning an adventure and I thought of her immediately when I was putting this thing together. That I was like, well, I can't have her play this game because, or I need to alter this scene, um, because it does involve the starvation of prisoners, and it is one of those things where I had to think about it, and I went, no, I could change that scene. And no, I'm not saying that a writer, designer, or whatever needs to change everything they do to avoid all trigger topics or whatever, because that's definitely not something that I subscribe to. But it does, if I know that person's going to be at my table, I want to know that that's going to be a problem for them, and we can have that conversation, or I can make the adjustment, or whatever. Uh, it's just part of that kind of unwritten agreement between the GM and the players. You know. Okay, that's number zero. I think taking a few minutes just to find a good topic warning, or my buddy Tom Nelson has an amazing, what is it called, the deck of many somethings. Deck of, oh my god, it's gonna bug me. But he has a deck of cards that have a bunch of specific topics on there, and it gets passed around the table, and basically everyone has the opportunity to pull anything out of that deck that they're like, yeah, this bothers me, this bothers me, bothers me, and then you can just kind of slide it over to the GM, and then when the GM doesn't necessarily get to single you out about a strange phobia or a specific instance or whatever. He just has this collection that he goes, okay, these are the five things or four things or whatever. And then obviously there's always the X card, and basically the consent and topic warnings I just think are a good idea, especially at conventions, because you do not know who's going to sit at that table with you, and you don't know whether or not those players may know each other. And you don't want somebody to go off on some, pro dog murder. I don't know anybody who's pro dog murder, but like there could be situations where the GM didn't know that was a problem at this table. So that is number zero in my opinion. It's like the session zero of these 5 ways. And then just find a good one. I did an episode a long time ago where I specifically linked to Monty Cook's form, because I really do love it. I think it's a great consent and role playing, like sheet of paper to add into any character packet or whatever. So right, now let's get on to the full 5 ways, the things that will actually help you be a better game master at conventions, in my opinion. Number 1, and this is going to sound stupid, but read and reread the adventure. Basically, do not come to the table with an adventure. If you're running out of a module, if you're running for a printed product or something, or even if it's something that you're designing on your own and you've got like an outline, read it 2 or 3 times all the way through, make your notes, highlight your things, grab your phone, throw stuff in there as parts of, things that you want to make sure that are emphasized, things that might be, if we start running short on time, we can kind of cut this. Get familiar with the adventure before you ever sit down at the table, because there is nothing that will ruin the player's momentum and emphasis of you going, hang on a second, I've got to read this. I got to see what this is, because not only does it show them that you're not prepared, but it also means that there could be, from a functionality, there could be something that you've missed because you didn't read it thoroughly, or maybe something that should have come up in the future, that's referred to in a non-narrative chunk of text. Just really, I want to be like, do your homework, but do your homework. Especially if you're running this for someone else, for another company or something, absolutely be familiar with the product that you're using. Even if you're doing a mostly improv outline based, just be familiar with what you need to do. That's important. Uh, number two, number two, in my opinion, this is more of a planning thing, and sometimes this is the up to the organizer of the club or the guild or company or whatever. But if you can, try and run the same adventure multiple times. Um, the reason I say that is because, yes, it can be boring because you're doing the same story, the same voices, the same narratives, the same pre-generated characters if you're using them. Yes, it can be a bit of a tax, but there is no question, the more you run a specific adventure, the better you will get at running that adventure. You will start to recognize patterns over particular parts of the encounters that maybe go faster than the person who wrote the adventure saw, or maybe something, the first time you run through the adventure, someone does something to overcome an obstacle that you didn't that you never thought of, that the writer never thought of, and now you can put that in your head and go, okay, I need to be ready for that. When I describe the lock, I have to say it's made from acid proof glass, or whatever, like you have to. It gives you, every time you run it, it's like anything else. It's, if you're a musician, you practice your piece. If you're a game master and you're trying to do it professionally, or as a volunteer at a convention or whatever, practice your piece, and your piece is that adventure. Now, a lot of times you might sign up for a ton of events to run at a convention for X company, and if that's the case, maybe ask to get it split. Hey, I'm running for 4 sessions. Can I run this one twice and this one twice? Or if I'm running 6 sessions, can I run this one 3 times and this one 3 times? But I really strongly, strongly encourage, if you are a game master, try and run the same adventure multiple times. So I do a lot of special guest stuff at conventions, where I do like special guest events where I run for VIP tables and stuff like that. And I pride myself on being a decent game master, I hope. But it's harder for me to run the same adventure multiple times at the same convention. But I definitely run the same adventure at least twice. A lot of times I will test an adventure out for the first time at like Gamehole Con, and then I'll run it again at GaryCon. Sometimes I might try and run something at like Origins. It just depends on the circumstance. But I try to run each one of my adventures that I've written 2 or 3 times. And then I cycle it out, because kind of by the time I get back around to the same convention, I want to have new offerings for the people who are willing to pay that extra amount to come sit at my table. I want to make sure that they are getting a new experience. And the last thing I want to do is I show somebody an amazing time at Gamehole, and then the following year they look me up because they go, "Oh my God, I really want to get at his table again," and they see that I'm running the same adventures. I I don't want to do that to them. I would much rather make sure that there are new offerings, so they will continue to look me up and be like, "Hey, did you see that? The crew from our starship last year is in a new adventure this game," and maybe they'll come back to that table and they'll go, "Hey, is it these are the same characters? I was like, well, yeah, these are the same characters, but it's a new adventure. They may try and grab that same character because they're more, just like I'm getting more in line with running the adventures, they're getting more in line with running that particular character. So yeah, I really think that it is extremely helpful to try and run the same adventure as many times as you can, because every time you run that adventure, you will get better at doing it. You will be able to adjust and adapt and have scenes that may have been kind of clunky because you had to improv a little bit, but then at the end it kind of turned out okay. The next time you run it, you'll start with that same theme and whatnot from the improv. You'll be like, all right, I know what's up. And you'll be able to make that into a better scene. It'll feel more like the way the scene was originally written, or it'll feel more natural as a game master to your players. Um, Number three, a lot of these game sessions are on a specific schedule, and uh, one of the things that I think that early game masters will sometimes run into is they will either be afraid of their time slot, and they'll see the schedule and go, "Oh my god, I only have 3 hours to run this game, but it's 36 pages long," and they'll just try and rush through it as much as possible. Don't give the players any time to role play. Don't I got to get to the next encounter. Oh, this combat's going to take forever. And they'll just run through as much as possible, reading it from like a script, and they end up coming up short. And it's like, all right, well, it's a 3 hour thing, but we've got finished in two. What do we do for that third hour? Or do I just let my players go? Depending on the convention, they may have spent a lot of money to be there and to be in those seats. And you've basically been like, all right, you paid for a 3 hour slot, but I only needed two. See you later. And not everybody's going to appreciate that, especially in the more expensive seats, the more expensive events. You need to try and shoot closer to the actual time. Work in some breaks. Work in some time for shenanigans where the players are going to be talking back and forth, or maybe they're going to ask you about, hey, how long have you been game mastering? How long have you played for this game? Did you write this? That kind of thing. Build in that buffer, but don't turn the entire session into buffer. And this will also, again, not to harken back to number two, but running the same adventure will help you with your timing. It will help you figure out which encounters take longer, which encounters are just a skill roll, we can move on, and which encounters you can either skip or absolutely spend a ton of time focusing on based off of how much time that you've got in the schedule for that slot. But you really need to make sure that you are paying attention to the time. Whether you use your phone and set a little timer for different chunks of the adventure. If it's a 3 act adventure and you got a 4 hour slot, give each act. Obviously, unless one act is this is one encounter, move on to the next act. Give it a chunk of your time and set yourself some alarms in your phone. Maybe not giant, loud, break the immersion of the thing, but just keep your phone behind the screen and look down when it starts flashing at you to say, okay, we need to wrap. I should be wrapping up Act Two by now, and then you can kind of gauge roughly how much longer you've got. But again, a lot of that's going to come with running the adventure more than once. Not every adventure is going to be written with time in mind. Um, but also, I think depending on the size of the convention, how early you wrap up will be paramount to the respect that you're showing your players. At a show like Gen Con, if a player books back-to-back events, they are not going to make it to that second event, uh, unless it's in the same room or like just down the hallway. You know, a lot of events are in different hotels, different facilities. Maybe for some people, a lift ride away. So as a game master, you have to take into consideration if you can find a way to wrap up your game like 10, 15 minutes early, give them a head start towards their next thing, you should. Um, it's courteous, it's just paying attention to them. At smaller shows like Gamehole Con or to a certain degree GaryCon is a little harder because of how spread out and weird the map is. Um, but like a show like Gamehole Con where everything is real close to each other, everything is within a couple of minutes walking distance. You can butt up to the edge of the next event pretty well. I mean, it's nice to give them a buffer so they can go to the bathroom or whatever on their way to their next adventure, but it's you kind of have to figure out where that sweet spot is. And sometimes it also depends on the type of event that you're running. If you're running a competitive session, like the how many monsters did you guys kill in the time slot, or did you get to this level of the dungeon, or whatever the type of event is, you may have to adjust your circumstances because it very well might be you know I would love to end this session, 15 minutes early, give you a chance to head off, but you guys are in the middle of the final combat, and if you don't beat the big bad, you don't make it on to the next level, or whatever. And if that's the case, then you do have to be, mindful of the schedule, mindful of the player's schedule. But you're going to try and get as much out of that as you can, and they'll understand that because they signed up for that event. But you have to be ready for it. You have to make sure your schedule and how you run your event, they mesh, that they go together. Number 4. This one's probably I think this is just kind of a common sense thing, but I have been to tables and overseen game masters that don't do this. Ask questions of your players. Now, I know that seems silly, but like, find out, hey, do any of you have an event immediately after this? Hey, has anybody played this game before? Because yeah, a lot of the ticketing systems will, and like event programming will say, some experience in role playing games needed, or some experience with this system, or total noob, you need nothing. You know, so asking someone, do they have dice? Do they have pencils? Um, have they played this game before? Have you played any modern role playing game, or have you played anything that isn't D&D, or have you played D&D? There's just basically take some time to get to know the framework of the players that you're dealing with. That way, you don't run into any weird surprises that can derail the session. Um, Similar to the whole topic consent form, but more of just a information gaining. Glean some useful info from the players around the table. Uh, Ask, two people sat down together. It could have been a coincidence, or do you guys know each other? You guys play together often. Um, Someone sits down and maybe they bring a very young player to the table. You can ask, has this, have you gamed with your parents before? You know, is this your first convention? You can work it into conversation. Just don't be afraid to have that conversation, because having that information, I've ran a table where someone brought their like 2 10-year-old kids, and while the event said 13 and up, I did want to know. It's like, hey, what's their gaming background? Did you just buy tickets for them because you don't have a babysitter and you need them to come with you? Uh, or are they gamers? Do they play? Do they play with you at home? And it turned out in that case, it was a 1-and-1. I mean, I remember very specifically, I was running a Power Rangers game, and one had played a bunch of D&D, one had not played anything, and really was just there because they couldn't leave them at home. And most of that game session, I knew that child B I would need to prompt. I would need to, hey, do you want to use your athletic skill to try and jump up the wall? Do do you it says on your sheet something about your Red Ranger power or whatever. I knew that there would be a lot more hand holding in that case because they've not played before. And the only reason I knew that is because I asked questions and because I asked the mom and I had that conversation going. So you can't be, I mean, you're about ready to run a, 2 to 4, maybe longer hour event for these people. You cannot be afraid to have the conversation and learn more about them. They're not just basically numbers on a page. They are not just bodies that you need to be able to turn in your game master tickets at the end of the night. They're people you're spending time with, and they're people you're going to be the face of this event. You're going to be that to them. So you need to have that interaction. You need to make sure that you're not afraid to have that conversation. Now, I will admit that there are times where there have been people at the table that they're in their phone their whole time. They don't care. They did this because they're like, well, I had an empty slot and my buddy here, drove me along, or and you can try and engage. There are also people out there that they're just not socially, they're not strong socially, and they don't want to have that interaction. They're just there to roll some dice, and not even so much of being the role play. It's the where's the goblin? Can I kill the goblin? Like, and if that's the case, give it a try. If it doesn't connect, if you realize that's that kind of person's interaction level, then that's information that you can put in your pocket and move on. But you need to be ready to have that conversation and have the interaction for you to learn something about the players. Also, and this is super weird. This is one of those things that I just learned. Ask someone what they want to be called at the table. Do you want me to use your characters' names? Do you want me to use your people names? Do you want me to use your Discord handle? Whatever the case is, you want to make sure that they're comfortable at the table, but you also want to make sure that in the heat of things, especially in like a loud convention hall or there's like a bunch of RP tables going on all at the same time, you also want to make sure that they that they're going to answer you. The number of times I've been like, Alucard, 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 it's your turn, and this person looks up, huh, and you're like, Steve, it's your character's turn. And that's because this is a pre-generated character. They have absolutely no idea. Their ears are not triggered to hear that name. They're not keyed in on Alucard, so they go, oh, you must be talking to somebody else. Must be talking to somebody else. I'm thinking about that platypus that stung me when I was a kid, and then you go, hey, Steve, and they're like, huh? And then they get that kind of everyone else looking at looking at them at the table. They're looking back with deers in the headlight. So just know from the very beginning what's the best way to interact with these people, and how the best way to get their attention, how the best way to maintain the smoothness of the adventure that you're running. And number 5, arguably the lamest cop-out answer ever, but also the probably one of the most important, and that is be flexible. Being the game master that is, nope, it's my way or the highway. Nope, it is the way that the adventurer says that this is the one thing, the one way it can do, one way to do, and nope, I don't care what you have to do. You have to be able to bend. You have to be able to work your way, work the players. This is what they're there for. They are not there to entertain you. You are there to run this game with them. And that means that if they come up with a weird solution, or they decide they want to go and do this strange thing, now you may have to think on your feet a little bit. You may have to take into consideration that okay, this particular player is going to be I don't want to be like a nuisance, but they're going to try to do they're the chaos gremlin of the group. They're going to try and do the thing that nobody has done before, and oh, they're going to try and break into the mayor's office. Why are they breaking into the mayor's office? Because you said there was a mayor's office. That's why they wouldn't break into it. And there's a way to be flexible without ruining your story. Um, the in the case we'll use the mayor's office thing. They walk into town. You mention the mayor's house. The mayor has this office, and one of the players goes, or as soon as everybody goes to sleep, I'm going to go break into the mayor's office. And you're like, oh, okay. This is obviously not something that you thought about. And so you could roll with it in the way that you all right, make a sleight of hand check, make a thieves tools check. You pop open the lock, or maybe they're just dumb and they shatter a window. Oh, I just break a window. Well, someone hears that, and you hear the whistles of the guards, and do they have a quick combat? Maybe. Are they more likely to go, oh no, I'm going to get busted, and then run away? Probably. Um, or you give them the opportunity specifically. All right, you hear the whistles of guards. Many booted feet are running down the street in your direction. You have the opportunity. You can run the other way. Do you do so? And this is where it comes down to uh, the level of the level of commitment you have to making sure that there's like a level of commitment to making sure that a player gets their agency, and then if they push it past that line, it's like, okay, we're doing the things, we're doing the things, we're doing the things, we're doing the things. All right, cool. Now you're getting arrested. Now you're getting beat up. Now you're getting, you find a way to kind of point out to them, hey, you did this to yourself, but you also don't want to ruin their game. So yeah, maybe they get beat up a little, they get arrested, or you just narrate a moment and you go, okay, cool, they've knocked you unconscious. You wake up. You wake up having been delivered to the inn to your fellow party members. You have zero money in your pocket, and it said that you had a +1 dagger. You don't anymore. Uh, you know, and maybe it will turn into a bigger thing, but more than likely that will be the slap on the knuckles that they'll go, oh, okay, cool, I need to do this, and potentially you've given them their moment. They've got their scene. Now you can move on to the rest of the plot, move on to the rest of the players, and continue the adventure. Hopefully, now obviously I've done episodes before on problem players, and obviously, if there's a chaos gremlin in the group that they just want to wreak havoc again and again and again, and there's just nothing, nobody else is getting anything done, and the adventure is just grinding to a halt. You as a game master can step in and go, hey, you signed up for this event. The event had the description of what everyone else here is trying to do. Is this something that we need to talk about? You're taking a lot of the limelight, and maybe it's time to focus on what the other players want to do a little bit. And again, just like in real life, if someone is going to be problematic, if someone's going to be the look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me all the time, you have to have that conversation. You got to be ready to have that conversation, or be ready to ignore the things that if it comes down to, they break into the mayor's office, get arrested, lose his dagger, lose his money, gets delivered back, and the next morning he goes, I'm going back to the mayor's office. You can basically go, you know what? You do that off camera. I'm gonna I'm gonna deal with everybody else, and then they'll learn. Oh, hey, okay, maybe it's not the me. You know, I want the this rule number 5, the be flexible. Be flexible, but don't be a pushover. Don't just be a Santa Claus and let your players do everything all the time, no matter what, because then you also run into the situation where your adventure is just going to fly off the rails, and they're not going to get anything done. And they're definitely not going to uh, solve the puzzle, get the plot, or whatever, because they're just off doing their own thing. Um, this is less of a golden rule when you're running like an organized play event, like if you're running something for Living Greyhawk, or the Pathfinder Society, or the ecosystem for Evil Genius. Like if you're doing if you're doing organized play, those adventures are a lot more structured and specific because they're part of a greater story. They're part of a greater plot that hopefully you as players have played the ones before or are going to play the ones after. And you're going to want to make sure that that story flows. The writers have made sure that that story flows on a plot level. So you need to, as a game master, you do have to try and make sure that you cover all the bases to make sure that the players get the information and do the major tent poles, the things that you need them to do to kind of be ready to move on to the next chapter. But you can hopefully be ready to do a little bending and flexing to let them do it somewhat in their own way. It is definitely a dance. Um, and a lot of it depends on the players you got at the table, and I hate to go back, how many times you've ran the adventure, how many times you've read the adventure, because you need to be ready. Not necessarily ready for anything, but you need to be ready to adapt if needs be. Um, and hopefully, your players will come to the table and have the same goal. They've read the description of the event. They know what they're there to do. They know what they're there to experience and enjoy. And you'll have that. You'll have the greatest session that you can, and you'll give them this great time that they will then take home to their friends and tell everybody about this great game master that showed them this awesome game. Let's go play this game. Hey, we're going back to this convention next year. Let's look up that game master. That's what you really want to do. You just want to try and make sure that you sell yourself to the best of your ability and sell the product, not physically commerce. I mean, I guess you can, but like you want them to tell people about that adventure, not for your own props or whatever. I mean, possibly, but also because that helps boost that adventure's existence, the game's existence, the company's existence, the everything that is attached to that experience. If it is a positive experience, they all benefit. And being a convention game master really does help doing that. Um, so I hope those 5 tips, 5.5 tips, I hope that was helpful. Um, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. Or if you've got any tips of your own, things that maybe I didn't cover in my 5 tips, maybe there's something specific that you're like, you know, hydrate, whatever the case may be, like put that in the comment section. I'd love to have the conversation. I'd love to chit chat about it more in the future. Um, without further ado, if that's the only reason you came to my show, go ahead and be safe and have fun, and don't don't do anything I wouldn't do. No, try and leave every room a little happier than when you got there, and you'll be a-okay. But if you are a regular, or if you just want to hear a little bit about what's going on with Bryan, stick around after the goofy break because I got some stuff to talk about. The week in Bryan. All right, so let's start with the elephant in the room, the hobby section. I look over at my extremely well stocked and devoted hobby section of the studio, and I weep because I have done nothing. I haven't even moved anything since we last spoke. Um, I need to get some stuff done. I got to get my printer cleaned and get some stuff printed off. Uh, it's it's uh, it's a thing. I just haven't. I've been so busy doing other stuff, and it's so hot, and so many chores around the house, and it's just I haven't had a lot of time. I need to. I need to take the time specifically, go do some hobby stuff because it's important. I'm sorry, no hobby update this week. On a personal level, the gym has been great. I'm still fussy. The whole aquatic side of my gym has been shut down for renovations for it's going to be for the entire month of July. So just a couple more weeks of that. So I haven't had any sauna. I haven't had any hot tub. I'll be interested to see how the renovations, like what they're actually doing back there. Um, but whatever that ends up being, it will be it will be a happy instance when I get back into the gym and they're like, "Hey, sauna's open again," because I love the sauna so much. Um, sorry, this is a whiny Brian. Um, but everything else has been like on a personal level, things are good. I'm gonna be doing some barbecuing this weekend on the brand new grill. Uh, the new car, still haven't fixed the window. Windows are expensive. Um, but yeah, no, I think everything's going great. Knock on wood, but it's a good stretch. It's a good couple weeks right before Gen Con to kind of ease into the second half of convention season. Gen Con's kind of like my hump uh, to get over, and I'm extremely excited about Gen Con. So yeah. So on a personal level, things are good. I think no complaints, I guess. Um, on a gaming level, I have played some video games. Played a couple of test games of Xenogenesis with the new Org faction. Very happy with how they're turning out, especially now that we've fixed the spotter thing. I still can't. So if you haven't played Xenogenesis, or if you haven't checked out the rules, um, there is a rule interaction that allows a model with like an artillery weapon or a weapon that has like charge up, kind of Dragon Ball Z style. Um, they put a marker on the board, and then on their next activation, they can fire at that marker as long as they haven't moved out of range, where it removes the marker or whatever. And the new rules for the org, we had given a very thematic unit spotter, but it was a cheap unit. Spotter allows you to spend an action to make the person shoot that spot. Like it's like you're spotting for artillery. It's cool. But the problem became that myself and pretty much everybody else involved um, forgot that the spot token, the lock on marker, doesn't go away when someone shoots. Only when they move out of the zone, or when the model moves, or whatever the case may be. But that meant that if you had a pile of inexpensive spotters, you could in fact have the person with the protocol weapon set up the lock on, and then just have a mess of these guys that fire, 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 fire. And that was a problem. So I had to switch that out and then do a couple of games real quick to make sure that the new version was better, more fair, and less ridiculous. And thankfully, they all are. Uh, I should be getting in some gaming this weekend. I've got a couple of my convention family swinging through town, and that's why I'm throwing the barbecue on Saturday. Um, so I'll be very eager to see them get some games on the table. We've got a bunch of board games that have never been played, so we will hopefully get a chance to play some fun things on Saturday. And then next week I've got two really cool playtest sessions for two different role playing games that I'm excited to get some stuff on the table. Um, One is a D&D adjacent, and the other one is some potentially new rules for the vampire. For the Vampire Bound by Blood that's coming out at D&D Beyond. Get your pre-order in now. Follow the link in the description. Um, but I want to get ahead of the game. No pun intended. Should Ghostfire and White Wolf and WotC ask me to go ahead and make more stuff in that line of game, I went ahead and did some forward projection, and getting a little testing in on it now is a good idea, in my opinion. And then lastly, work stuff. So I have been busy. I sent in the pitch for the latest Shadowrun novel. Have not heard back yet. As soon as I hear back from that, we'll get that squared away. Um, Here in a couple of weeks, I'm going to ramp up some more hours over at Evil Genius as we've got a bunch of really good projects coming up that I want to get more time to be able to write them, but also um, to help kind of help move along some of the other processes where things get bottlenecked. Um, Thundercats, from what I understand, is almost ready to head to printer. Um, like the final layout and art and everything is being lined up. Everything about Intergalactic Heroes is looking great. I am currently working on a fantastic spooky themed bonus feature for Everyday Heroes, which is going to be a ton of fun when people get it. I'm very, very excited. I know Rock Band Heroes just came out and people are saying lots of nice things. I think this is going to fall into that same category. I think that people are going to see this and go, "Man, that's fun," and then find a way to use it in their regular games, because that's what I shoot for. I love the idea of doing like supplements that like that's the only reason it exists is for people to play that supplement, but the goal is to make something that is so much fun and so attractive to the everyday heroes uh, community that they all grab it and go, I can't wait to do this in my regular game or add this element to the game that I run or whatever. It's the whole point of using a system that's adaptable like that. Let's see what else. I finished up a good a cool Shadow Dark conversion for some stuff. Um, I made a pile of really cool D&D monsters for the world of Drashar. Um, More to do with that. I need to do some tweaking and adjustments there because there was miscommunication, and I completely uh, overdid some of the things that I need to dial some stuff back and make some tweaks and changes. And there's some stuff that's missing, so that's cool. I get to do that in August. Um, Warzone continues as planned. We just added a handful of new playtesters, so they're getting their feet wet on units they've never seen before. And yeah, no, so things are, again, Xeogenesis is cooking along, and I just feel like I am doing design consultation for another miniatures game that I can't talk about just yet. Um, but yeah, no, just I'm busy. I'm still not to the point where I'm like, I have to work 12 hours a day every day. I'm handling all the deadlines the way I should be. Everything feels good. I feel like I'm in a good place, and that's important to me as a worker, business wise, the whole nine yards. I just um, it's good, especially with how expensive May was, and then the cracked window and all that garbage. Um, oh, speaking of which, uh, last week I mentioned the crack window on the car, and so thank you to the donor. Obviously, it was $20, but you know who you are, and I appreciate it. It's $20 toward the $500 window that needs to get replaced. So I appreciate that. Thank you for using the Venmo. I barely ever use Venmo. So when that came across the account, the Venmo ping, I was like, wait, what? So again, thank you. You know who you are. And if anybody else wants to contribute to the channel in some capacity, obviously all the channel information and whatnot is in the description of the video. Yeah, I think that's it. That's the week in Bryan. Oh, there is one last little thing that I have to comment for the people who are following me on socials. I had to change my Facebook name. So my name, BryanCPSteele, CP being Carl Patrick. Um, Apparently, sometime in the last couple of weeks, has been when people search for me, they have been getting flagged for looking up underage sexual content. And because of the initials CP, I cannot tell you how unbelievably angry that makes me. Um, because the automated service at Facebook, I reached out to them and was like, dude, these are my middle initials. Can you remove this flag, please? And they can't because it's all about the AI generated algorithm. The AI flagged my account for or rather flags the search because someone is searching something with CP in the initials. So therefore, obviously, I could be a danger. Are you kidding me? Stupid computers doing stupid computer things because there is not enough human interaction to understand that that's my name. So I had to change my Facebook. So my Facebook handle, instead of being BryanCPSteele, which is my name, I have to go by Bryan C. Steele. I had to remove the Patrick part of my initial lineup because of the stupid AI-driven algorithm computer search. If you weren't aware how much I hate the AI proliferation in our world right now, and how so many things have been automated and dumbed down. We're getting into rant mode. I apologize, but things that are people just simply cannot think for themselves. We can't even have this. I mean, I understand a search engine has to be automated, but there should have been something that I can click on that can go, "Hey, Facebook, no, you can remove me from that safe search because those are my initials." You idiots. Sorry. That was a minor rant. I apologize. You come here for my happy smiley face. Maybe one of these days I will do just a rant episode, a trigger warning at the beginning of the beginning of the episode. Brian's about to go off. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe I'll do a trigger warning live. Ranty live. I don't care. Either way, thanks for coming out. Thanks for watching. And thanks for sticking with me all the way through to the end of this very long video where I ended with a bunch of me ranting about AI. Um, so basically, just, thanks for taking the time to be part of me and part of the channel. Please like, share, subscribe. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Uh, tell your dog or your platypus. Until next week, be safe. Have fun. Wash your hands, get shots, wear a mask, don't be a jerk. Just try and leave every room a little happier than when you got there, and I think we're going to be okay. I will see you next week. So have fun, be safe, play some games. Because I will. Bye, guys.